and training is available, and they're putting it all on faculty. They're saying faculty should learn how to use a screen reader and test these things themselves. Well, we tried that with teaching people how to caption their videos, which is actually not that complicated, and we didn't get anywhere. We saw we're going to need to have support for captioning, and I don't think it's going to work to say you should learn how to use a screen reader and test this yourself. What I do know is leveraging our voices works. I still have a printout from Alex's website. Alex is a math program that's adaptive, and they used to have a statement very boldly on their website that said to make Alex accessible would break the magic of the beauty of what Alex is. They had no intention of working on accessibility. But there was a strong, powerful, loud instructional designer at the Community College of Austin, Texas, who started presenting and rallying other people, and they got enough Texas schools together to leverage their voices and say, we're not going to continue to buy your product unless you fix it, and they fixed it. That's the power we in faculty have when we leverage our voices. But what does that look like? Where are we going to do that communication? Since I've been here for our trip, Christopher and Dale, we were talking about we're going to reach out to Central Access to fix something that I'm going to pay Central Access to fix. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Mark potentially is going to have a budget to work on classes that, just in general conversation, they're the same classes I was getting ready to pay to fix. We don't have enough money in our budgets to duplicate. I know this is Christy. She talks about sharing every time we're together. But it's getting real now. We don't want to be jointly paying these vendors to test the same things. So I see the problem. At the biggest part is the communication and collaboration. And what would that look like? Where would that space be? I'm getting ready to break us up to do some brainstorming and then come back together. We have avenues. The listserv is great, and I'm getting a lot of information from it, and I really like it, but it doesn't really work for collecting this kind of information. Who's going to test this next? Who's got the money to do this? Could we share the bill? Something like that, and collaborate. One potential is maybe making a Canvas course where we start discussions, maybe. I talked with Scott Dennis and Renee Carney yesterday. They, just for testing purposes, if we're interested, they're going to create us a private spot in the community. So we would have all the elements that the Jive software has to be able to post things and share information. I want to ask that we think about what would the procedure look like, and then let's talk about the staffing versus outsourcing and the role of the state board. We are right now in between having Jess and not having Jess's replacement. But if we think about that row, think about the great work that Jess did was around advocacy, providing us information in time and training. Never did the state board get involved in our business and say, this is what your procedure is going to look like. That's on us. So if we keep waiting for that to happen, it's not going to happen. We're going to have to figure out what is the role. We know our college climate and the politics and how we're going to move forward on this. But it's not waiting until that position gets filled. Some of us are looking for money and getting it to add another person to our campus. Do we need to do that 20, 30 times and have those people work in silos? The more I learn about accessibility, the more I know there's more I need to learn. And in working with Central Access, who is a team of 22 people, I've realized they have specialties. There's not one person who's responsible for everything. So in one of the classes that we were working on fixing in spring was an accounting tax class. And the IRS said they were accessible, but they weren't working with JAWS or any of the Mac readers. So when I reached out to Central Access, they said, oh, and it was this obscure reader nobody had ever heard of. They're like, this one will work. Get the student this software. I think it's almost cruel to think that you would have one person at each campus that would have to have the specialities to know all that and be able to do tactile graphics and just all the things that we know are needed, versus if we had one team that supported our system like Central Access, or maybe multiple if we had 4 teams in the region. So I'm going to ask us to come together and break apart. Let's spend at least 20 minutes and talk about the 4 issues I think we have facing us are What does the procedure to go with our policies need to look like? How are we going to handle this test? And 2 is the testing. So the state board has got us these negotiated agreements with 4 vendors. But should we be paying for that? Or should we leverage our buying power and tell the publisher or the vendor, we have 9 colleges looking at your product. We want you to pay the test if we go forward. But how do we have that communication and collaboration come together, which is our 3rd issue? How are we going to communicate better so we're not paying to test the same things? And what do we want to do with these positions? Do we want to keep siloing ourselves and trying to add on an additional person at each college? Or do we want to build a team that if the state board doesn't want to do it, we do it? And that would be, I'm asking you to help me brainstorm whether the colleges chip in on the salaries, or we do a funding like Central Access where there's a fee, but the fee is not going to be what we're seeing from these vendors of $150 an hour, because the team is not going to be built as a for-profit entity. It's going to be built as, potentially, if we decide to do this, as a help us entity. So it's providing the salaries, not trying to provide a profit. So those are 4 challenges. I'm going to ask us to get into groups of 4, and you can tackle the one you feel like you have the most input in. Procedures, testing, positions, communication. And we'll come back together in 20 minutes. Any questions?
Can you put those topics on the screen?
Sure.
Yep. Oh, sure. And online folks, for this breakout, Dale here in person will work with you and kind of help facilitate.
I'll mute the room so the online people can talk freely without. So online people, I'm just going to briefly mute the in-room stuff so we don't hear you talking while we're talking at the same time. So I'll turn it back on when we get together. Okay.
Hey, Clipper.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brandy.
And thanks, Dale, for making sure we were all taken care of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it looks like prompts are to discuss the procedures. Well, I guess, does anybody have like any general thoughts about what Christy said to get us rolling?
This is Jeannie from Wenatchee. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we've been circling around for quite a while on our campus is testing, because it doesn't seem like people in the workforce currently necessarily have the skill set needed to do software and product accessibility testing. And if there are people who can do that, there are very few of them, and they probably already have jobs. And so the question then for us becomes, well, what kind of training is available? And that is where we hit kind of a brick wall. It's like we can't even really find a place where people could learn to do those things. So, and maybe that's just something that's out there that we're not seeing, but that's sort of our current big problem that's holding us back.
Yeah. So here are we talking about accessibility of software or are we talking about accessibility of content we create in our courses, resources we put on our website? I think there are two different issues. I think the software part can be the easier one to deal with, since there is a maker of the software. If there is a procedure, a process in place, we can figure out how to choose software that is accessible. But when it comes to artifacts we create in our courses, that's, I think, the more challenging task than the software. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, and to me, oh wait, let's see, Kathy, bring up my chair. So Kathy says, at Clark, we did create and hire for a full-time permanent classified position to support faculty in creating accessible materials. As instructional designers, we have a UDL certification program for faculty, 5 workshops to teach them how to make accessible course materials, how to use Ally properly, how to create videos, and how to caption videos. Since we are in close proximity to both the state schools for the blind and the deaf, we do have a sizable population of students requiring accessibility. Perhaps that's an advantage because we have a very strong DSS department providing this for a long time. And we have faculty who have experienced having students with accommodations required a lot. So I think our situation and climate. So I think that for our situation and climate, the position makes sense and it has been working for us. Sorry for the length. Actually, I remember at the instructional designers retreat, Kathy, when you presented that certification program that you all are doing over there with the workshops. And I thought it was really, to me, it seems like a really effective sort of way to promote that kind of training. I really like the certificates that people get. They look very official and seems like I could see like our faculty being moved by something like that.
Now, on the opposite side, we have some of our STEM faculty who are like, well, all of our videos are captioned. Our stuff is as good as it can get. Stop bugging us. This is too much work for the minor percentage of people that we serve.
Yeah, it's a rough. I don't identify with people.
We've lost a DSS person because of the very verbal attacks she was given by these people. And Catherine, I have a whole list of notes. Sorry. I'll shut up. Go ahead, Dale.
Oh, no. I think that's good. It's definitely, I've heard some horror stories. I haven't experienced any of that firsthand, but recalcitrant faculty are a huge problem. Jeannie says, are these resources, the content, not necessarily the people that could be shared? We aspire to attract students with disabilities, don't really have the resources to hire for a position. I want to make headway on this. I think that's sort of part of what Christy's sort of pitch is, that like we don't all have access to, as individual institutions, like some of us can hire positions, most of us cannot. And would it be worthwhile, and what would it look like if we had some sort of resource sharing thing? So like maybe some of the expertise that they have at Clark could be leveraged to benefit the system. I'm not exactly sure how that would look, but I think that's what we're sort of hammering out.
Yeah, the only disadvantage, I love what Christy's trying to do and I support it. The only disadvantage is it's also what Jess was doing. And even for all of Jess's videos and lunch and learns, I had 3 people at my college actually show up.
Right. So I also heard Christy say something like maybe the PD and training model is not as effective as maybe pooling resources to pay for people to remediate or have some sort of central body maybe within the system where people are doing the accessibility work.
Oops, sorry. So they basically, the idea is we hire one person or a group of people. Here's the stuff, get it done.
It kind of sounded like what I got. I don't know. Somebody else could chime in or correct me if they have a different interpretation.
I know that's what some of our faculty are asking for. Can you get somebody to do it for me?
Yeah, because I think it's like, it's a combination of this culture building. Like you can make some headway with training and sort of. We recently last week had a very successful accessibility workshop where one of our professors came in and talked about her experience with disability, and we had a panel of students and faculty and staff. But like when it comes down to the nitty gritty of like doing the work, like we had a biology OER textbook that we've just been like wringing our hands because it's amazing, and it's one of our top enrolled classes at the college, and they created an OER text saving students $100,000 a year on balance, but it's completely inaccessible. So we're going to have to probably pay Central or another third party to do alt text for hundreds of images, or like have some poor work study do it, which we're not going to do. But these are the sort of things that we run into. I'm sorry, Martin says, has a question for Kathy. Does Clark have a procedure in place for faculty adoption of accessible courses, text, software, etc.? How do you get ahead of the adoption of inaccessible materials? That's a great question.
I can talk out loud. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I realized I couldn't type as fast as I could talk. So I think it's less of a procedure in place and more of a raised awareness that because of our larger population, possibly, of students that require that, we probably have more opportunity and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I've experienced faculty having students with needs for accommodation for all 25 years that I've been at Clark College on a regular basis, like got to get something out of the oven. So it's like if a faculty member has a blind student in their class, and then they have to reactively get things fixed, and everyone around them for a whole entire quarter have raised awareness of how complicated that is. And that just filters its way through the whole college. And so I think that's more of what's going on for us. Cookies, I'm actually making brownies, so y'all can stop by and grab one later if you want.
Yeah, thanks. That's the culture building part and raised awareness on campus is definitely huge. And maybe there are things we can do as a system via, I don't know, WAC. We talked yesterday about having a heavy OER track and maybe UDL and accessibility. Maybe we could have a keynote that addresses that, which I think would be really powerful. For the nuts and bolts, like, have any of you experienced really sticky, like, problems of inaccessible software, or faculty like kind of going rogue and using something that is not accessible for students? And if so, how have you addressed that? And do you see a system-wide solution, or I don't know?
So
Anybody?
this is Jeannie again. We have faculty who use, what is the product that was in the LA, My Math Lab. And so we know that there are problems with it. And there are probably other schools where their math faculty are using that too. But the hard thing is convincing faculty that there's an accessible alternative that's of high quality out there, and lighting the fire under them to make a shift away from the inaccessible material, because I don't think we know what, if anything, the publisher is doing to improve the accessibility of that. And so it's just kind of this thing where like, oh, okay, well, this is inaccessible, but there isn't something that is accessible out there, so we're just going to stick with the inaccessible thing. And I think that's where we could use help, is in these products that all of us are using, and what Christy was talking about with like leveraging our buying power to put pressure, because it's not just us, it's all the schools in California too, right? And probably all over the country that are now worried about this issue.
That's
So
really
I'm not sure what our power is.
Hi, this is Jennifer at Green River.
Hi, Jennifer.
So as I listen to these various things, so we've got pressure on the publishers, we've got faculty members who created a great OER thing that isn't accessible. We're talking about somebody to fix it, right? Hire somebody to fix it. The trouble is, all right, trouble, one of the troubles is that this isn't an active awareness of everybody. If every faculty member saw this as a social justice issue and every faculty member was chewing on a publisher, do you think something would happen? If every faculty member knew, then as they're creating that OER, as they're creating things, the trouble is if only the people who are carrying the torch are just a few people on your campus, then we continue to produce inaccessible things, we continue to purchase inaccessible things. So at Green River, I'm kind of thinking that we need to pick it up as a social justice issue and get all of our faculty educated, and that's how the world's going to change, when there's a large group of people saying it, not just the 3 people on your campus who are carrying that torch, saying, hey, look at what you're doing. And you know, when the faculty and they say, oh, you know, I didn't realize, or now what do? I've already selected this thing, I've already created my syllabus. Okay, so fine, start next time, right? I mean, this is moving so slowly anyway. If we could draw a line in the sand at some point and just make the future things better, we would be better off than we are today. Because right now, it's still just those couple torchbearers.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Some of the professional development and capacity building events I've been to, like at the Do It Center at University of Washington, they say that like faculty, by and large, aren't moved by things like the threat of lawsuits or ADA requirements, but they are moved by and compelled by equity and social justice issues, and they just need to see that like accessibility is an equity issue, and if you can make that the center of your messaging, as opposed to like we might all get sued, you get a little more buy-in from faculty.
You can say that, but you also get the pushback. Well, that's what we have the lawyers for, or I'll take it up when the time comes when I get the notice.
Yeah.
Or this is way too hard to get all of our geology stuff done. Or, yeah. Sorry, I'm going to be the naysayer today, I guess.
No, I mean, and I think that's an important point, and I think that's sort of like the next question is, what do we do for the people who aren't moved? Or sometimes it's not that people aren't moved. Like in the case of our biology textbook, the faculty were totally on board. They want to make it accessible. They worked with a third party, and they have this text that now they actually went back to the publisher and they're working on a second edition, and the publisher is going to help out with the alt text. But it's a more of a capacity issue. Like in order to put alt text on 300 images in a biology textbook requires some subject matter expertise and a lot of time and technical expertise. So what can we do as a system, I think, to like address just the technical hurdles that we're facing, even beyond the sort of buy-in issues. I don't have an answer to that, but I think that's.
I think at some point you will need an external push and internal procedure on how to deal with the accessibility. For example, there is Department of Education these days requiring colleges to assess their learning outcomes. And so as institutions, we are requiring, and we have those accreditors coming and check. So is there a point we will get to where we are checking accessibility of our courses, and if they're not accessible, what happens?
Right. So like at the policy level.
Yes, the policy level, I think it's we need it. Otherwise, at this point, it's like an optional thing. Faculty can do it. If they don't, fine. But I think we need to hold them accountable at the system level and have a systematic way of checking those courses. Like, for example, at Skagit Valley College, we don't have a formal process of finding out if we have accessible courses or not.
Yeah, and Martin's framing a similar point where he's like the line in the sand needs to be an actual policy and an enforced policy. I think that's key, right? Like there has to be some sort of a mechanism for accountability.
And accountability is where a lot of us that went through Jess's Access 360, what are we doing when they don't meet the policies and procedures? Do you have a reprimand program? I know that's one of the places my college failed at. No, we're not penalizing faculty for it, but we do tell them, hey, you got to fix this. But no, Martin's question is right in the sand. We need to do this as proactive rather than reactive because it gets done. And I agree with Jeannie too about Cato being revitalized.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of the action will happen.
Hey, and Jeannie just volunteered to be the representative over there.
Congratulations.
There you go. I second Jeannie's volunteering.
Yeah, and I know Mark and his that group that's doing strategic technology has talked about like what's going to be like the sort of consensus around the ask when we're looking at like which technologies we're going to be buying as a system or supporting as. And there should be a definite line in the sand where like if this piece of software is accessible, you're not getting a consortium contractor.
Well, I have another issue here. At my school, if it became a policy that had to be enforced, we'd actually get more pushback from the faculty than just trying to. What I'm trying to do is just try to talk to people and advocate, which is an extremely slow process. But I mean, we need to have some flexibility campus by campus. Campus faculty communities are very different in each location.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's definitely what the state has in mind when they're like not making, they don't want to interfere with business of the individual colleges, and that's for the better. And I think as a system are probably like what we can do, like the policies and the enforcement and the accountability probably has to take place at the institution level, but like what can we do in terms of the sort of remediation or technical assistance or I don't know, like we have more carrots at the system level and the sticks have to be at the institution level, I think. Unfunded mandates, that's a good point.
Yeah, faculty keep asking us, are we going to get paid for this extra work? No, I am the mean Canvas admin that we've been asked for things like, can you link Grammarly in my Canvas class? Nope, it doesn't pass accessibility scans. Oh.
Right.
So yeah, I'm the mean person doing that, but I'm also on the TAC committee, our accessibility committee too, so.
Brandy, do you get pushback from faculty on that?
Sometimes yes, but I also dig my feet in and argue. That said, we still have people like Pearson, the MyLabs, and those linked in knowing there's issues, but right now I'm trying to, from the date of we had to meet 188 onward, I won't link anything in that hasn't been tested.
And
then we have to do the retroactive stuff too eventually.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that sounds like a good position to have taken. We walk a fine line between making decisions like that sort of unilaterally and poking holes in our relationship with faculty across the campus.
Oh, I've made a few enemies, but I also have the backing of the accessibility committee and the idea of universal design. But yeah, I've made a few enemies, people who scowl at me as I walk down the hallway.
Sure. But what about structural, like administrative support? Is the VPI on board with your position?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
She's also a person of invisible disability, so she's very much on our support. And our accessibility committee reports to both VPs and indirectly the president.
That's awesome. It looks like the groups are starting to come back together for share out. Anybody have any summarizing thoughts or things that we want to share out? This is an awesome discussion and I can share with the group, but if anybody has any last thing that they want to get out there. Oh yeah, well, looks like Christy is talking on the mic, so we'll make sure that we get you guys back plugged into the action. Thanks for an awesome discussion.
As I promised, it's not a situation that can be fixed in an hour or a day, but I am excited that you're helping move forward. So I saw a real lively conversation going in a corner with Amy and et al. Let's report out and share out. I'm going to take notes and then send I'm going to have each group report out. We have 20 minutes left, and then I will take notes and share them out with everyone. Which topic did y'all tackle, or variety, and what potential solutions or ideas or new problems have you come up with?
Yes. Okay, this is Amy. Okay, so I guess we got bogged us down in the scope of this awesome thing that you're attempting, and kind of, there's so many areas to accessibility. There's the publisher materials, there's software, which I know you're like, no, software, but Canvas is software and Panopto is software, so it's important. And then Canvas content and individual classes, and then accommodations for specific students. So we had questions about sort of the scope, and maybe did you have a small scope you were going to start with and then build out on that? So that was sort of a big question. And yeah, we picked scope as a non-topic that wasn't on the list. And then procedures, well, yeah, we touched on all of them. I don't know. I think there's faculty training needs, because we as a system can't expect any one place to remediate all the faculty content. So where's that line of you train faculty and you hope they'd stop creating terrible stuff, but can we expect them to remediate it all? We can send some to a hub, or what would we do in-house versus, Edmonds had the great model of having faculty advocates who would go out for accessibility and help, sort of changing the culture while maybe something like this is also remediating content, so it's multifactorial. And so I guess really the outcome was scope. And so, where are you thinking you're starting? Like, is it publisher materials? No, we are, because that seems like.
And that's a great point. In scope, I've been thinking a lot, focusing on how we handle the positions and how we handle the communication. So I've made an ask at our college that's actually being considered, that when you look at all of the lawsuits, they all name a new employee. That would be a dean, that faculty would have to get approval for materials before they're adopted. And when you look at the lawsuits, the timelines are just, whoa, like the dean will be selected within 3 months and all materials and all courses will be fixed in 1 year. And that's lawsuit after lawsuit after. That would be such an enormous amount of money on how much outsourcing you would have to do. I'm like, from knowing we have multiple cases right now in the Office of Civil Rights, let's get ahead of this. So my ask was for an executive direct, in talking with we have a council for accessible technology, and the team came up with this idea of a new employee that's an executive director reporting straight to, this is our draft, an executive director that would report straight to the president, executive director of accessibility. So it's higher than a dean, lower than a VP. And we do think this should be someone with a disability that actually understands the day-to-day of this community. And I asked for there to be an additional educational technologist who could remediate documents that our faculty are creating, not fixing the stuff from the publishers. I want to still hold them accountable. And then a procurement person who sits with the faculty at those negotiations with the publisher and is trained to know what questions to ask to help them negotiate that process. There is a really great listserv. It's EduCause IT Accessibility Listserv, and they recently had a conversation asking everyone what your team is, what's your size, what's the scope. And the larger schools like Penn State and larger universities, they all had a procurement person that helped the faculty in these conversations. And I don't think we have anyone like that. And it would be very helpful. The other thing about scope, Amy, is I was thinking, we have faculty that care and we have administration that care, and we're all kind of spinning our wheels on what this procedure would look like. Our faculty at Olympic College and at the administration level have asked, give us a draft of what this would look like. And I need your help on figuring out what that would look like. I think if we bring them something that's at least a draft, I think we can move forward. And so what these positions should look like, whether they should be individually at our colleges or a team, like the team that Central Washington has. I think you mentioned that Cato had asked the state board to create this team and there was not any progress. But if our colleges join together, I think it would be harder to say no. If our executive teams at our colleges join together and say, this is what we want, or we created at one of the colleges. So the positions and the communication, I think we have to figure out to move forward on the procedure. Jeremy, what telling me a report out from the group that was talking about procedure? I realize it's in scope is a very big thing to tackle.
Okay, there we go. So the reason I wanted to sit at the procedures table is because we have been drafting a procedure for accessible technology at Grace Harbor College. And it didn't occur to me that maybe other colleges hadn't reached that step yet. We're a small college, so sometimes we feel like we're behind the curve, but other times we don't have quite as much red tape to cut through to sit down and get things done. So I just kind of wanted to know if folks needed that sort of procedural documentation, and if perhaps we could help facilitate that by sharing it. So we had a lot of other conversation around the procedures, though, in terms of the guiding philosophy, I guess, of it. When we were developing our procedure, our VPI actually sort of put a stop on our work. I had sort of come in a bit late in the process where they had taken a document from another university of Montana or something, and sort of just made a few adjustments and tried to run it through. They gave it to me shortly after I came on board and said, hey, put some dates on this for when faculty will have things done. And I made the mistake of doing that. And then my VPI was very unhappy with me for not being a little bit more considerate of the faculty's time. So fair enough. But we had to then sit down with the VPI and sort of rethink our whole approach to this procedure. So we talked about just those hurdles and the philosophy that we used moving forward, which was a lot more faculty-centered. How can we make this procedure very friendly for faculty so that it's not intimidating for them? We ended up actually incorporating for the guidelines for faculty, we used the Washington course design standards. So the essential standards for accessibility, we felt that was the simplest way we could express to faculty, here's what you need to do. And we talked about bringing faculty on board with that. How do you get the buy-in, or at least not get as much resistance about it? And different strategies for that. At Grace Harbor, we gave a presentation, which was well attended, and we essentially talked about, yes, this is a compliance issue. Here's why these regulations are in place. Relating it a lot to the same justifications for having physical accommodations, wheelchair ramps, elevators, things like that. And how the accommodation model just has not been serving the students with disabilities. Right? We said that we'll do these things when the accommodation request comes in, but for decades we haven't done that.
In your draft plan, who had the role of enforcing?
So the work group that authored the draft of the procedure is going to be providing oversight. So that group continues to provide oversight to the procedure. So, yeah, Dale.
Yeah.
I really like that you're using the course design checklist as your standard, and that got me thinking. I'm also doing that, and we're building, we're revising our review system and building a new sort of professional development, instructional design portal around these standards. And I'm wondering if at some level we can leverage all this great work that we've done creating this sort of instructional design checklist and take those standards, the essential standards. I know Jess put a lot of work into beefing that section up and just say like, this is what we're all drawing from as a shared pool, as like our sort of shared standards. And if we're all sort of like drawing from the same playbook, so to speak, it could leverage the way that we collaborate on these things.
As the checklist.
That was the main thing that I harped on was, here are the essential standards. This is your piece of the response. Is my mic on? This is your piece of responsibility. The procedure doesn't contain just faculty. It's a very small section, right? There's also e-learning, accessibility services, IT, library, and every stakeholder on campus. It's for the whole college. But that was what we wanted them to understand, was that these essential standards are your piece. This is your responsibility. But we'll try and make this as easy for you as possible. And really, when you look at those standards, most of them are just don't do things wrong in the first place, and you're good. There are going to be some things that are never going to be easy, like captioning is always going to be a bit of a pain point, and it's important to acknowledge that frustration. But most of the things are just don't do them wrong in the first place, or learn how to use these tools to do the things you're already doing and make them easier and better anyway. And when faculty saw that, they were a lot more receptive to the work that we were asking them to do.
I think it carries a little more heft to it as well, saying like these are the Washington State standards for accessibility and course design. When you're talking to faculty, I think it like has a bit more gravitas to get by.
Yeah, I've been very proactive in sharing those out as a draft, and qualifying that they are a draft. But I'm a big believer in those standards, and so I've tried to make them available to faculty at every opportunity.
It's actually a fifth part that we'll need to think about as we go forward, is what the state board has brought up. If we use the vendors to test, what is the guidelines? Because there's actually multiple checklists and standards. But then there was a group in the back with Patrick and Sarah and Christopher. Let's hear a report out, and then I want to spend at least 5 minutes talking about the communication aspect. Someone from that group want to?
Well, one concrete thing we took was if we run an RFP, just including the requirements that one of the 3 vendors that was chosen through the state board's process over the summer do an independent test of their product. And that's just a minimum standard in the RFP, and then make that also available to the state. That's just something we can just put it. So like with the ETAG group, as we build out the app store, that could be something that we upload in the app store, we could share around. And if we make that part of the minimum expectations in an RFP, then it'll just get done. And otherwise they won't get the product. They won't win the RFP.
So I do think that's the solution, or one of the many potential solutions. And that is kind of what caused Alex to fix their product. So to make that happen, we've got to figure out the communication. To apply that to software is going to be easier at the state board level than instructional materials. For the instructional materials, I've only thought of 2 possible avenues. We either communicate together, like who's looking at this organic chemistry book, and go to the vendor and say 9 of our colleges are looking at this book. So will you pay to fix it or not, or pay to do the test and make sure it's ready, or we're not going to go forward. Or one of our deans brought up the model of taking it publisher by publisher, coordinating with the bookstore and figuring out our students, our college, Pearson is making X amount of dollars at our college. From this point forward, if we're going to go with Pearson, we want you to pay for the test. McGraw-Hill, go publisher by publisher. That would take what Jeremy was talking about, a lot of buy-in from the faculty, but I don't see a negative unless there's a boutique course that there's not another book that exists, and then we start having that conversation now. Kevin.
So as you were talking, I was thinking about where e-learning really fits into that process. And we were kind of talking about last night, like how sometimes we don't know faculty have publishers until the LTI process and the work with the publishers already done. It would be really interesting to have guidelines about whether or not we will allow LTI integration if we haven't gotten it through an accessibility review. And that is something that we are more likely able to control.
Patrick, with 5 minutes left.
So I just want to share, this is Brandy mentioned this specifically in our online discussion, that as an admin, like she won't let anything in Canvas that hasn't been tested, like, and she's been doing that since 188 was implemented.
So that's the policy. We're going to have to get ahead of it on the procedure, because often when we find out about the LTI, the book's already in the bookstore, the faculty have already told the students to buy it. So we're going to have to, let's brainstorm how to get ahead of it. So we just have a few minutes left. How do we tackle this communication thing to make sure that Mark and Christopher and I are not getting the same thing remediated on the same book? Does anyone have an idea on the software or the hub? Do we want to try gathering in the community? Do we want to try Canvas course? Do we want to try something else?
So there's an open mic between Amy and I, so I'll go. And then, so one thing, you could, like, why not just a big Google sheet? Right?
I like it.
Enter the name of the product or whatever, the test, and who to contact for the results. unless we can get some clearer indication that like it's okay to share, right? Because there's some legal concern about that.
Sorry, Mark, to interrupt.
And I was going to say, one thing that's worked well with Caption Hub is just maybe this is Google Sheet Starter, and then moving forward with some sort of portal kind of thing. Because Caption Hub, if I submit a video to Caption and Highline's already captioned it, it just sends it back and goes duplicate. And then I write to Paul and I go, hey, Paul, duplicate. He goes, oh yeah, someone else captioned it. Here's the file. So something where it's just kind of an auto check.
I would say extend Caption Hub then to, like, you don't have to write to Paul. He says duplicate, here it is.
Well, that would be nice, yeah.
That's one of the benefits of the potential if we had a central team fixing things. Then if Christopher ordered something that Mark needed, I would already have it. Like the team would already know.
Can you guys hear me at all?
So,
hello.
It would be really interesting, maybe to address a couple of things as ELC. One, we talked yesterday about professional development opportunities for ourselves, and I think this is one topic that would be great to have. Every meeting to have something, whether it be a tool or a process or whatever around. And two, so we talked about communication from the perspective of the vendor. Actually, like if I am going with software, we require that the vendor, as a part of the RFP, have a third-party test. But instead of giving the results back to us directly, the results go back to the repository at the state level as a way of communicating out. So then when somebody else wants to buy a software, the first thing they do is go look at that repository to see if any of us have required the vendor to do that. So as a part of the process, not having the results come back to us as a college, but to a public repository for ourselves as one way of communicating what's been done.
It reminds me of what we saw last meeting that Ward built, but I think we need a duplicate on because that they're not going to give access to everybody. There's only going to be access, and there's still all this unfounded concern that we're going to get sued if we put truthful information. I think we need a duplicate for instructional materials.
I think, yes, for duplicate, for instructional materials is one, but for vendor kind of things, I think if we're going to pressure them to do it, they benefit because they only have to do the test once for us all to see, versus if we each go to them and have an RFP and they have to test each time. So it actually benefits the vendor if they make it public in our public repository, because they only have to do it once. And we say that this is a part of our process, and we all agree to that we don't accept it without them paying for the test and making the test a part of the repository.
And it could be a marketing tool for them across the country to pass the test if they pass. Okay, I want to be respectful of our time. I'm going to send, I'm sorry, we want to let the online people. Is the mic, is it turned on?
Yeah.
Christy, you kind of mentioned what we were talking about.
Is there anyone online that wants to chime in with the group?
Trying to. Hello? Nope, we still don't have a voice. Hello? I'm still babbling till Chris tells me to shut up.
We hear you.
Oh, yay!
we just now got the audio, so start again.
Okay, I was just babbling until you guys said okay. You kind of mentioned it already, Christy, with Ward's database in terms of making sure the software's tested, who did the testing. There was discussion before Cato went down, before they got disassembled, that having a specific group of testers that we know we can trust at each of the colleges or whatever, somebody who's gone through the trainings, those kind of things. I don't see much difference from the software database to the educational software. why we couldn't use or leverage Ward's database for something instead of duplicating the efforts. That goes back to your discussion earlier. Why are we doing this all individually where we could group source?
My only concern about that process is it's taking too much time. The trusted testers and App Store and all that has been in the process for about 3 years. We have 11 students without vision at Olympic and an additional 11 that are reliant on screen readers for, or 9, an additional 9. They're reliant on screen readers for neurological issues where they medically learn from having stuff read to them. I'm asking that we figure out some solutions and not wait on that because it's taking too long. I
Fair
can't
enough.
wait
Thank
to.
you for explaining.
I'm going to send out a message so that the online people see it too via the listserv and ask for people who would volunteer to help me in some Zoom meetings continue this conversation so that we try to get to some solutions sooner than 2 to 3 years. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, Christy. We'll have a 10-minute break and we'll come back and do some voting on bylaws. So let's return at 10:18. See you then. Please make your way back so we can get started. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Please make your way back. Okay, so this next section is bylaw voting, and I'll do kind of a quick reminder of kind of where this came from, and then I'll talk about what we need to do in order to make some of these things happen, and we can get started with it. So I won't talk too long about this, but as a quick reminder, where we really saw an issue was, I believe it was last year, when we were voting on how we wanted to disperse payment for Canvas and for the new contract. And in doing so, we realized that there were some flaws in our language and also probably a little bit of misunderstanding about voting. So at that point in time, we also thought, okay, it probably makes sense to look at our bylaws in general and rather than doing it piecemeal, kind of do it all at once and see where do they no longer make sense. So we asked you in the summer meeting to get in groups and kind of brainstorm some issues, and we posed some issues to you. The E-team took all of that together and tried to put it into easy to understand language is what we're doing here. So what we're going to do is look at each of these, discuss as much as necessary. I'll ask for a motion, a second, and we'll take a vote. It works according to our bylaws to amend or revise a bylaw. We need 2/3 votes of members present if there is a quorum. We do have a quorum. I'm of the understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've got 21. So we'll need 14 to amend or revise the bylaws. And so there's documents linked in the agenda. There's kind of, excuse me, I think there's 4 of them that should kind of help with reference points. What I'm going to do and how I kind of think makes the most sense to do this is I will briefly summarize the point and hopefully the rationale why. We can have any necessary discussion, which could be robust or nothing, and I'll ask for a motion at that time. Any questions about the procedure or the how or the why? Are you going to do like line by line motions or? My original thought was line by line, but I'm open to suggestions. There's 15, but I figure probably what may happen is that some will go quickly and there might be a few that there's discussion needed for. Yeah. Okay, let's get started. The first one is amending Article 2, Section 1, and really the quick summary on this is, and what's on the screen right now, is that the proposed language? And it's really it's whatever the group wants. I don't care. The comparison is what I heard from Sarah.
Yeah.
So what I'll say before I won't read that whole thing at the moment, but what I will say is the point of this one is to include the website manager and the online meeting facilitator as part of the executive team. And then the other thing that this does, actually it's 3 things in one. So it's including them as part of the executive team. And the rationale behind that is that they do a lot of work for us. So why are they not part of the executive team and voting members of that group? The regional reps are. So that's kind of the rationale behind it. The other thing that this is doing is pointing out, much like the language for the regional reps, that the treasurer or membership coordinator can serve until a successor is elected rather than an annual election. And that's important because, as we know, it's really hard to get a treasurer due to we need the agreement from the college. And the last thing this is more formatting, I guess, but we included in this language all of the term lengths rather than breaking them out into sections. So if you look at the current bylaws, you'll notice there's a number for each position that says this position serves this term, this position's, we combine that all into one. Discussion.
I have a question. Dan Taylor at Centralia College.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is the intent of this to have every single officer elected? Because the way I read the phrasing, like the chair-elect will then next year have to be re-elected as chair, and then the next year be re-elected as past chair. It seems as if we're changing the structure for all officers to be elected, that we should change the names of the officers, or change that the chair-elect is the one that's elected and then serves that 3-year progression.
Yeah, that is actually, no, that's not the intent. The intent is that how it currently stands is that we elect a chair-elect, and that person in reality serves a 3-year term. Year 1's chair-elect, year 2 is the chair, year 3 is the past chair. They would not get voted on each year. Each year would just be, as we've done in the past, we vote on who the chair-elect will be.
Well, then I would move to amend that language. I think it's the second to last of the red to all officers, to maybe just a listing of the officers that will be elected by majority vote, and then maybe another statement, because it doesn't say anything that the chair-elect becomes chair, and because I think you deleted a lot of that language as well, if I remember my reading through this.
So this is Mark from Highline. So it would say something like the chair, treasurer, website, online meeting facilitator, and 5 regional reps will be elected by majority vote. And then we leave out the chair-elect. So we leave out the chairperson and past chairperson from that sentence.
Yeah, that's what I would propose, just to make it clear.
Can we say that again? The chair.
Kevin's taking notes. Can we, or Mark, or was it Dan? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think Mark is the one who put it in better words. So, but I guess we were saying that the chairperson-elect, the treasurer membership coordinator, the website manager, the online meeting facilitator, and the 5 regional representatives will be elected by a majority vote of the members present at the spring meeting of the ELC. So basically that whole big bit is going to replace all officers.
Thank you. Kevin's typing that now so we can see it.
Do we need to include the progression as well? Because if you look at section 2, it talks about how long they'll serve and then they'll move on as the past chair. Do we need to include that somewhere?
I would assume so, yeah.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Sorry, one thing at a time.
Yeah, let's do one thing at a time, though.
Let's see. I don't know why the notes aren't showing up. Maybe because I have to hit enter for you all to see them. Yeah. So I have all the positions will be elected at this spring meeting. Is that what we said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that will replace the last sentences of officers shall perform the duties prescribed? Or no, all officers will be elected?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second to last sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, you're basically replacing the all officers with an itemized list of the ones that actually are elected. Save most of that sentence. Just the chair. So strike the chairperson. So it's because it's the chair-elect that we elect or that we vote for. Then the treasurer, member coordinator, website manager, online meeting facilitator, 5 regional. Yes, that's correct. Right, Dan? Does that?
Although I think I kept the language about by majority vote. Will be elected by majority vote at the spring meeting.
That wasn't in the original, but I think it's a great addition.
It wasn't the original, but that's okay.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I was looking at it, so it is in the proposed. Great. So yeah, you're right.
For an addition, Martin is recommending, he says, I also wondering if the language of shall serve a term of 1 year or thereafter until successors are elected is clear. Does that mean we have an election every year for these positions, like treasurer and website manager, or do they keep serving until they say they're done with it?
I thought treasurer was a lifetime appointment. No. Didn't we tell you that, Martin?
He's laughing.
How I would see that working operationally, and so I don't think it's clear, but how I would see that working operationally would be unless someone chose to want to step forward, we could call for nominations to do either of those roles. We would then have an election. For instance, if I said I really want to be the website coordinator, I'd like to, nominate myself or nominate someone else, but we wouldn't necessarily have to have an election each year for those positions if they were running unopposed. I think that's especially important, as we've talked about before, for the treasurer position, because we typically don't, historically, at least since I've been here, we haven't had an election for that each year. It's the only time we've shifted was once, I believe, maybe twice since I've been here probably, but.
So just a point of order. One probably shouldn't be actually editing that document and just putting notes in until we actually vote. There was language that said I'd like to motion, so I'm going to take that as a motions on the floor in regarding changing of this language, and I want to respect people's motions. So I want to clarify if there's a motion on the floor. And if there is, we would need a second and a call for a vote.
Sorry, I missed the motion. What was the motion? I don't recall there being one.
Just recommended changes. Are we?
Well, I did say to move to change to the language that is on the screen right now for us online vote.
Got it. Thank you.
Just recommendation.
So, sorry, Kevin wasn't mic'd there. He was wanting clarification if that was an official motion or just a recommendation to change the language.
I can change it to a recommendation instead of an official motion if that works best for how this procedure runs. I'm kind of new here.
Well, this is the first time we've done this, so we're new here too.
Okay. However it needs to run, I'm willing to do. We can make it a motion or.
Yeah, I think recommendation makes the most sense. I think the goal here is to have a discussion around, this is kind of what the E-team put together, but it's a small group of us who did this. So let's have an open discussion about what makes more sense. And then when we get to a place where it seems like the room is happy, we can call a motion. How does that sound?
It works for me.
So do we have to let the changes marinate for 2 weeks? Or since there's been a proposed change and we're just tweaking it, are we good to just vote on it?
My understanding is it's somewhat of a judgment call. If it's a very substantive change, we need to. If it's minor edits, we do not. And frankly, I think we have to make that judgment call.
Yeah.
If that's kind of.
The suggestion is here. You want to repeat that?
If we want to continue down this road of recommendations for change and see what they look like, then we might want to do that for all and then make a single motion for all changes. This way, I feel like that allows us to kind of connect the dots in case we change one above. And then later when we're reading below, we might, oh, this has impacted how we changed the one above, and we have to go back up to the one above and change. So maybe we kind of go through them all and discuss them as a group and then do a blanket motion to approve all changes.
Whitney agrees with that procedure, and if Whitney wants to make that an official motion, then I second it. That we make basically what you just said, make all of the changes, then go back and make an official motion to accept all of the changes.
I think that's okay, and I don't think we need a motion to do that. I think we can look around and do that.
If we needed it official, I was throwing it out there as I'll make the motion.
No, I think that's just procedural. I don't think we need it for that. The only downside to that would be everything would have to align. If we called a motion and it failed, everything would fail. That being said, I am in agreement. Let's move forward. Just noting. Okay, are we good with section 1 for discussion? Can we move to the next one? Sounds like next one.
One thing. Do we want to add the language that at the spring meeting, the chair-elect becomes chairperson and the chairperson becomes past chair in there?
Yes. Great. Kevin's working on that now. While he does that, anything else on 1 or move to 2? Okay, we'll move to 2. The change in section 2 is essentially really 2 through 7. We're essentially removing all of the individual term dates because we've now included that in 1. We are noting that regional representatives shall be voting members. The reason for that was discussed, and anyone else part of this discussion, feel free to speak up. But the reason for that is in our procedures or in our bylaws. Should a chair-elect step down or move away from the position, the executive team votes to replace the chair-elect with a regional representative. But you couldn't do that if they weren't a voting member, because they couldn't be chair-elect and not be a voting member of the group.
So this is Mark. I found this one hard to understand. I feel like there's a preposition that needs to be there, right? So regional representatives should be voting members of the council, or regional representatives must be voting members of the council. There's an of what was the question I was left with?
Sure.
Okay. Is shall or must a better? Because that's what you're saying, is that they have to be a voting member of the council.
I think must is fine. Other discussion? Okay, let's move down to the next one, amending Article 2. That's what we just did, sorry. Revising Article 2, Section 11 to note that members, hold on. Sorry, I was in the wrong spot. Can you scroll up just a little bit? Yeah, that's where I'm at. As it stands, that section 3, or we're changing it to section 3 because currently it's section 8. We're just adding the word voting rather than member, because we have 2 different types of members.
Is that intended to say if you're going to be a member of the E team has to be a voting member? Like, is that the, should we just say that?
That sounds good to me.
Right. Yeah. All executive team members must be voting members of the council. I think we're just extending the section 2 language to everybody else too, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
Just duplicate.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so Kevin, duplicate the section 2 language, but instead of regional representatives, it's all other officers. And maybe we just add it to section 2. We just say all officers and regional representatives must be voting members of the ELC.
Yes, yeah.
That just consolidated into one bullet point. So where you are now, just type all officers. And
Chris, can you scroll up just a little bit? Yep. Thank you.
And then that negates the need for this.
That kind of negates the need for section 3.
And so then we need section. So this becomes 3.
Mm-hmm.
I see it on my computer. Might want to just refresh. No, you're still not seeing it? No, you were on the right one, Chris. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's recommendations. I can change it to just accept them if you want me to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just change that I'm editing instead of suggestions.
Okay. Okay, now we're down on the new section 5, prior section 11. And Chris, can you scroll down a little bit? Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Keep going down. So that part's at the top, yeah. So you can see that text there. We're essentially just adding that. So if you read it as is, it says the retiring chairperson shall identify and present a slate of nominees for chairperson-elect and treasurer membership coordinator at the spring meeting. The membership present at the spring meeting shall vote to elect new officers. Nominees do not have to be presented. So essentially what this is saying as written is that the chairperson is the only person who can nominate an incoming or chair-elect. And the language we're adding was that members can nominate other members or themselves.
Sorry, I'm being a pain today, I guess. Should we include the web and Zoom jockey in that list of in the slate of nominees?
I think that's a good suggestion because as this was written, they weren't part of the executive team, and we're making that change. So, yes. Website manager.
Can we motion that Zoom jockey becomes the job title?
Well, my next question is, do we have to include that there because they aren't renewed every year, so they extend past? So we re-elect the treasurer every year? Or I guess I'm kind of confused.
I guess that's that's kind of a discussion, right? That's a piece of the discussion we were having earlier, right? Is do we at least need to pro forma say, yes, this person, we reaffirm this position on an annual basis? Do we need to annually reaffirm those? As necessary.
Sounds like a good idea to annual reaffirm, even if it's the same person who ran it last time is doing it again. It does seem like a good idea to just say, yeah, we give you another year, go forth and do your job. So
Okay, so I guess really it's just putting the responsibility on the chairperson to communicate with the current member or the current, job holder. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Anything else, or move on to the next one? Great, move on. I'm going down to 8B. We're changing, the proposed change is changing consensus to majority vote. And what to do in the case that no regional rep is willing. So what this is discussing is what we talked about a little bit earlier. Should a chair-elect step down, this is the process to replace them. The proposal is change consensus to majority vote of the executive team, and add in what will happen if no regional rep is willing to take the role. Discussion?
What's a regular vote?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. The intent would be at an ELC meeting, we would have nominees and yeah, right. Yeah.
Should we say like a vote of the full council
that's clear, more clear.
Propose, yeah.
Discussion, or can I move to C? Moving to C. This is just clarifying. I think, by the way, I think this is especially important as we talk about people coming into the role and actually understanding what the role is, because these are posted on our website. But all this is doing in C is clarifying that what the chairperson will do if there is no past chairperson. So, for example, if Sarah was to move out of the ELC, it would be my role to attend the IC meetings, and that's typically the past chair's role.
So,
you're fine.
I was going to recommend something like assume the duties of the past chair instead of the specific attending the IC meetings, so that if we do change the duties of the past chair, we don't then have to change this line.
I think that's great. MVP.
Just read them yesterday. So,
can you repeat that for Kevin, please?
So, in C, and the ELC chairperson, or an appointee will assume, instead of attend the IC meetings, will assume the role, assume the duties of the past chair.
That accounts for great changes
in
titles of meetings and committees that they may serve on. IC may not exist 10 years.
I was sorry for those online. I was just saying that I appreciated that because the new language makes it more general and allows for us not to have to update the bylaws just because the IC committee changes its name or is no longer in existence, etc. Thank you.
If we want to assign that the past chair should bring donuts to the winter and spring meetings, then we don't have to update the bylaws.
More discussion on C, or can we move? Okay, we'll move. Actually, it's not in red, and thanks to Sarah for pointing that out, but just go down to D, so not very far. Just a similar change we made above. You'll notice we're changing proposing to change consensus to majority of the executive committee. Yeah, majority vote is what Don said. Sorry, I missed that. What'd you say, Mark? Yep, okay, added. Great. Discussion on D or move? Move. Okay, we're going to Article 3, Section 2. We're proposing to add a duty, essentially, which is chairperson-elect will take attendance and establish quorum.
Done.
They've been doing it for years. Might as well make it official.
Okay, let's move to section. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I back us up to
yes,
Article 3, Section 1A lists the instruction commission. Can you tell I hadn't read the bylaws for like 10 years, even when I was chair, and now I'm finding this stuff. But the chair, Article 3, Section 1A says the chairperson goes to instruction commission.
Isn't it past chair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So we probably just need to strike the second half of that clause. I think the first half might stay because we don't, right, if there's another group. To other system group, and just strike that part, exactly. Strike the end, the instruction commission.
Yeah, do we want to move that down past chair?
It's already there. So it's just a duplicate.
Good catch. Okay, I'm moving down to section 4, treasurer. We've striked out A, approved subscription requests to the ELC listserv, and the reason for that is we've tacked that on, and operationally we've already done this, but we've tacked that on to the duty of website manager, not the treasurer. And the second thing is E, we noted tracking of event funds, and that's specific right now to WAC and the ID retreat. Thank you, Sarah. Discussion. Gone. Okay. Going to section 6, website manager. This is what we just spoke of. E, approves subscription requests to ELC listserv. This is just having the website manager do it.
Would it make sense to generalize that? Just like to council lists?
Council listservs.
Yeah, because WAOL admin, and then should we ever add or subtract something?
I don't think we manage WAOL admin though.
We don't.
But that doesn't matter. Still, your point is there might be future listservs that we do manage.
Yeah.
So.
To council communication, to council online communication tools. Just
And communication tools.
Council, listservs and communication tools.
I see a thumbs up. Any other discussion?
Thanks for the descriptive audio there.
Article 4, Section 4. This is getting more specific at a quorum and changing it from 50% to 50% plus 1 of the number of active members. So the two changes are changing it to 50% plus 1 from 50%, and the other thing is recognizing that we have 34 colleges represented, but not every college participates in the ELC.
Do we need to specify voting? Active voting members?
Yes.
Like both, use both modifiers.
Other discussion on section 4? Great. Okay. Section 6 is simply a proposal to participate, what it means to participate in meetings, how you may participate. And we're specifically talking about doing it digitally. I see another thumbs up and no discussion, so we'll move on. If you notice anything, we can jump back at any time. And thank you. Article 5, work teams. This one has a little bit more to it, but essentially what it's doing is establishing parameters for what work teams actually do. So Chris, can you scroll down just a little bit? It talks about when they'll be established, evaluated, how they'll form, meaning membership will be self-selection. You'll get to pick which work team you're on. However, the membership, the chairperson can shift membership to or disband work team if they're unbalanced. We talked about having at least 4 members to actually be a work team.
Chris, can you scroll a little more?
And work teams are determined by chairperson in alignment with ELC and IC goals. I'll give you a second to read it. I want to make sure you've had enough time to read it without making you sit there and stare. So give me kind of an idea if you need more time to read or if we can start discussion. Okay, discussion on work teams. Any discussion about those?
This is a great addition.
Perfect. Moving on. There's nothing in Article 6, but this is kind of the big one. How I opened today's conversation about clarity around voting. We're proposing to add Article 7, voting, in details on voting. Probably what's best here is to do the same thing and let you kind of read these and then have discussion. So give you a couple minutes to read these and I'll check in.
In section 1, due should be dues paying, not in both instances, not due paying. You're not due paying, you're dues paying.
And the top line as well.
Section 4 is reiterating wording done before. A majority of 50% plus 1, the percentage sign is missing, of all voting members.
Great suggestion, thank you.
So is section 3 really necessary? I mean, not so much section 3, but the 24-hour notification. I mean, whoever does that? Nobody ever does that.
Yeah, that's actually new. And so where that's coming from is the chairperson-elect. It's very tough for that person to determine who is voting and non-voting. So a concrete example from last year, we had a college that voted twice because one person voted online and one person voted, and they obviously weren't doing it intentionally, but or maybe they were, but the issue of having some kind of check and balance for that, because it's tough for the chairperson to be like, did I get him in person? Did I get him online?
I guess.
24 hours sounds like such a big window. Like, for instance, Martin and I talked about this before the meeting on whether he was going to be available at this time. And if he had called me this morning and said, hey, I'm going to have to go into a dean meeting, can you do the voting? We just wouldn't have gotten a vote because it wasn't 24 hours.
So great point. And we talked about this, and we could change the language to say before the meeting. But it's, again, we wanted to really clarify that a documented process be in place for understanding who's actually voting, because the document says one person. And then another example is when two people from the same institution show up except for the voting member. So which one of those two is the voting member? Like, there's lots of examples of understanding. So we could change it to before the meeting, or we could leave it at 24 hours and know that that's more of a, like, please consider 24 hours. We also understand, like, you may wake up and get sick, right? Like, and not know that until you are about to get in your car and head to the meeting, and understand that there might need to be some flexibility in that. But from a kind of like way to put a seriousness to it, like to get us to actually think about doing this, we wanted to, we started with the time frame.
Then you should put the word, with preferred 24 hours to give the flexibility or the acknowledgement that stuff happens last minute.
What about instead of must, you put should?
Well,
the college's voting members should submit the name.
You like, if you want to give your proxy to somebody, you have to do the contact. I think the only question is when. So an hour prior to the meeting, does that creates a time frame, gives the chair-elect some time to process and deal with it?
I think one of the issues there, so I agree with the point that 24 hours is tough. The other side of that is it's also tough for the chairperson because you're expecting them to make sure they're logged in and checking email and checking for the things and trying to get the meeting going. So that's one thing to consider.
If you put a time limit in the bylaws, then if somebody does not make the time limit, you are disenfranchising them. You know, you can't say, oh, well, we'll put this in the bylaws, but, you know, we'll make accommodations unless you actually say that in the bylaws.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So the question is, how do you get that notification in such a manner that it's going to be relevant? I mean, I'm not sure that actually the notification will stop confusing situations like the one you described.
What if we just exclude the time frame?
That's,
yeah.
Well, you know, again, you know, what happens if something happens during the meeting?
I think we're way out on the long tail of possibility for, you know, I got called away during the meeting. I've never actually seen that happen in a situation where it would have impacted a vote in 15 years on the council. Mm-hmm. So I think establishing a process, so you have to do this by email to a person by a time, is good practice. I think that's. Martin has suggested language on the chat.
Oh,
we got Martin.
I was going to say, Mark. I was going to read that. There's two suggested. Could there be a Google document with voting members and you edit your name for someone else that is used for marking votes? Or should it say at least 24 hours prior notice is encouraged? That was both Martin and Whitney's suggestions. Or reasonable time frame was Jeannie's suggestion.
So if I were to rewrite this, it would be like the college's voting member must submit the name of the proxy to the chairperson by email before the start of the meeting, period. 24 hours notice is preferred.
That's acceptable. I think it meets, yeah, everyone's saying that's, yeah, I'll shut up.
One thing that might help the chairperson in that, and this could maybe also be preferred, or maybe it doesn't even need to be in the bylaws and just can kind of be an acceptable practice. But I think as the chairperson, what would help me in that scenario is the person getting the proxy could perhaps come to me and say, hey, check your email. I'm taking the proxy for.
Well, and I don't want to get.
I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the practice because bylaws don't really focus on practice. But when we say via email, then that we're kind of dictating practice and how. The other piece is we could, in every agenda now, like we now have the new attendance form, we could have a proxy form, and that you have to fill out the proxy form prior to the start of the meeting. Then I can just, the chairperson-elect can just check that form, that document, the results form spreadsheet before the meeting, and it could just have the meeting date, the name that you, college, and the name of the proxy really quickly, and it could just be linked in the agenda, so you always know where to find it. Does that work? Does that make it more difficult? Is that too?
Why not just back in the old days? When I had teeth and hair, we used to do attendance like going around the table, right? And so somebody would say, hi, Mark Lentini, Highline College. I have so-and-so's proxy, right? I have Heather's proxy for Everett.
The thing about that was whose job is it? Like,
right, to notify.
To notify. Like it's my job because it's as the voting member. I'm using me as an example just to decide who that is, right? Because it's like I take the kind of the responsibility of voting pretty seriously, and it puts that person in an awkward position to prove that it was me that gave them the proxy, right? So I think it really is on the voting member to notify the council as to who is voting in their stead.
That's a good point.
Because it's who sorry.
Why don't you just modify the current form? Voting, non-voting, proxy. If you use proxy, then you put in some more information like, I am so-and-so, this is the date.
Totally do that. So the suggestion is under the attendance form is to add the proxy information onto that form.
I like that idea.
But I think we keep in the bylaws, I think we should keep the 24 hours notice preferred. I think that just makes life easier on the chair-elect and the chair to know what's going on. Because that is hard. Like it is from an hour before the meeting starts, it's really hard to add new information into the system.
So I think the way that it's reading right now, it doesn't dictate the how. We've already established that the how will do that, and recommends a 24-hour preferred notice. Does that sound good?
Push the button. There we go. Back at section 1, voting members must be registered dues paying members. Do we need to talk about what dues paying means or not? We cannot, but there are some people who take a while to pay their dues. So they're here in the current year with unpaid dues and voting. Are we fine with that? Sorry. I mean, I don't know if we even want to address it. It just occurred to me that dues paying is a little vague, and there are folks who take a while to pay.
Yeah, and we did have a little bit of a conversation about this. And the hard thing about it in our system is sometimes it's not the department's fault of why they haven't paid yet. Like it takes forever to get payment to get through my organization, right? Like I have little control over that. But do we want to put a time frame? Like, I mean, it's one thing to say it takes 3 weeks to get a check, but 6 months, I don't know.
That's unacceptable. 6 months is too long. I mean, really, they should get it in the first quarter.
We hit a button.
Where do you press? You just press it? Yeah. Here. It should be on.
So I think 6 months is unreasonable. I mean, the start of the fiscal year, everybody's redoing, you know, whether it's contracts, whatever there is, certificates, whatever you're paying. It seems reasonable to get that out that first quarter. 6 months, somebody's not doing something.
Well, there is another problem. Like at Centralia College, we were just new hires and we did not know about the dues until we got an email. And so we're working on paying it now, but we did not know that we were responsible for putting that through. And it just lack of communication on that, on basically our organization's fault.
I totally get that, you know, but it's kind of like taxes, right? If you don't pay it, you still are in trouble. So, I mean, it seems very rigid, but I don't know how you keep some consistency to this. You know what I mean?
And I think part of the reason we had dues paying in here was if colleges chose not to participate in ELC or not to pay, then this indicates they don't have a vote, you know, if they're not choosing to pay and participate. Yeah, pay to play type thing.
Have we ever once had someone intentionally not pay and try and vote? I'm trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Okay.
Seriously doubt it, but I don't know.
I think I would agree with Chris's statement that I think I get the point, but I'm not sure this is actually a problem.
And that concept was a part of a lot of our conversation about how like there was a lot more that I actually wanted in the bylaws based on my past experiences and a lot of the decisions to not add those things in that were really based on our culture as a committee and our history as a council, and whether or not we're putting it in there because the behaviors have occurred or we're putting it in there to protect. And a lot of the times it was, well, this has never happened. We can't imagine it happening. And we can always change the bylaws if we need to. So the more simplistic we can keep the bylaws, the better, is kind of the discussions we had around this, just for information's sake, conversation's sake.
I'm totally fine with that. I just thought I should bring it up. So thank you.
Other discussion on any of the items?
This is Mark again. I just want to compliment the E-team on going over this and looking at this. I don't think it's been done in like 12 years. So bravo for taking it on.
E-team appreciates it. A little bit of a painstaking process and it's painstaking for this group as well to go through it. Your point was overdue.
Thank you from Online Land too.
Well, and that 2008 one, I can tell you, was just to change the name from DLC, Distance Learning Council, to ELC. So that literally was like, that was a find and replace.
So yes, much overdue.
The membership list.
Yes, there is that list. I believe it's available on the website, correct? Under budget. Or membership link. Yeah. Yes. That's the whole list, yes. Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear you. Tim from Big Bend moves we approve the changes as presented. Sarah seconds.
I'll third. Yes, Brandy.
Perfect. All in favor? Let's
online folks, please say aye.
Aye. Clavel.
Yeah, let's make it simple, and we're going to start with the online folks. Go ahead.
Clavel in favor.
Aye.
Whitney says aye. I say aye. So does Martin, Samantha, the Dan Sarah combo, Kathy from Clark, Jeannie, Claver.
Kevin, do we have what we need?
Yep, we have what we need. Are there any? Yeah, any
for the online? Yeah, for just online folks, we're going to kind of do it in two sections. Online folks, all opposed? Abstained. Okay, for the folks in the room, if we could just do it by a show of hands, all in favor? Are you ready for the next?
Yep.
All opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Oh, we know.
We are going to, let me go back to the agenda. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 11:27 for a state authorization conversation. Then we'll move into a working lunch and adjourn after that. Come back in 10 minutes. Okay. Please make your way back so we can have our last agenda item before lunch. Please make your way back to your seats so we can have our last agenda item before lunch. So our last agenda item before lunch, I've put 3 people on the agenda for this. Kathy sent me an email. She might not make it. She was online, but she might not be able to attend this part. The reason I put these 3 folks is they had each expressed an interest in state authorization conversation at some level, and so I thought it made the most sense to just kind of combine them and see where the conversation takes us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn and Sarah and Kathy if she was able to make it, but she didn't know it. She probably won't be there.
Well, I think the main reason I asked about it was my institutional research department actually contacted me asking, hey, I heard that there's a change in NC Sarah and gathering information. What are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. Let me talk to the eLearning Council and see what they're doing. And so I know the reason this all happened was because Christopher's IR department talked to my IR department. And so I guess I'm wondering really what anybody is doing. Are you calling students individually to see what their actual location is? And if so, that means I'm going to need to call 60 people roughly. So I just was curious. And Dawn, I don't know.
Yeah, so my situation is exactly the same as yours. Christopher's IR people talk to my IR people, and I said, let me ask others. And we're, so thank you. Yeah. And so my question is, we're not a Sarah school. We don't pay for it. I bring it up every couple of years and I mention it to people. We have a pretty small online program, just one fully online degree, a couple hundred fully online courses every quarter. So the investment is, significant for us. So I'm wondering, since my IR department is now paying attention, what y'all are doing. There's been some kind of new development after the extension that we had about making a decision. I'm just wondering if anyone else is in my situation or what y'all are doing. Thanks.
I'll speak up and say I don't know because our IR person just moved to DC. Dan and Sarah asking, what does it mean to be a Sarah school? There is an out-of-state authorization system, Dan. It's called NC Sarah. It's so if we're all part of the collaboration, we don't have to pay the other schools to evaluate our right to offer their students online classes.
So in the past, what I did was I would check to see which of those students are taking face-to-face classes, and I would assume that they are actually local. And so for our college, it was just a handful that didn't, that were not local. This year, they referred it to IR, and IR came up with something, and they just went with that. So maybe I just need to find out what they did and let you know. So
that'd be great. Thanks.
So a question from online was, what is SARA? It's the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. It's an agreement between every state except California, get together California, and it allows us to, nope, just California. It allows us to teach those students in those states that are online, and we have to follow some regulations about doing that. Another piece I wanted to mention was the new federal regulations, which just got dropped to the Federal Register as of November 1st. Boom, it's coming. So you can choose to follow those rules now, and you have a choice as an institution to follow those rules now, or you can follow the 2016 rules that were delayed and then implemented in May. And one of the things that the new rules that are coming into play July 1 of next year require is that you have an official public policy that around address changes, and you're collecting student location change through some official process. And so there could be a variety of ways that happens. They're leaving it a little bit vague up to the institutions. There could be a variety of processes where you might find out a student's address is changing, and that's something that I'll be working on, is developing a policy, as well as I'm looking into ways to potentially leverage CTC Link to capture that through there's this action thing that we were initially investigating into ways we could improve our gaps in our race data. We've got some 30 or 40% unknown. So we could do a little pop-up, and they're like, hey, can you fill in this thing? Let us know. So I was looking at investigating that action thing as far as an actual process, but I'll be working on developing some sort of policy around that. And so the address change specifically is not just for online students; it has to apply to all students. Policy.
So I'll go quickly, and then Kevin, go ahead. But for what we're doing currently, I think we're doing our best effort, but I don't think we're actually doing what we need to be doing. We do a little bit what was talked about. I think it was Jerry who mentioned it. We do a little bit of cross-referencing between folks who are face-to-face and make that assumption. But we have lots of students who are not in the state of Washington. And I am kind of going to want to piggyback on Chris. I'm a strong believer that we should leverage the council to, and I know this is a tough ask, but to ask a technology solution to this in CTC Link. I mentioned before at a prior meeting, I'm enrolled in school as a student and a distant student, and each quarter that I register, I get a pop-up and it says, please type in the address where you will be taking classes from this quarter. And to me, it seems like that's something that CTC Link should be doing for us.
So this is Kevin, and at Seattle Central, when we came across this, I knew it was a touchy subject and really broached it really directly with our VPI. And we came up with different locations to communicate to students that it is their responsibility to tell us where they are taking classes from and give us the address. And then from a reporting to NC Sarah, we report whatever is in our system, because we link to where we tell the students, we link them to where they can change their address, and we trust that they are providing us with that information. Because when you have 6,000 students, I'm not going to, it's just really difficult. So we wanted to really place it on us educating them what they needed to do, and providing the resources for providing us with the necessary information, and trust that that's happening.
Curiosity. Whatcom's not here in Lake Washington. Yeah.
I can tell you, if you aren't and you want to become, I have lots of resources. We were in the process of helping our North and South colleges, and with the resources and the structure that we provided. So we basically, I gave them the 3-ring binder and the template, and I believe if Ariana's online, she can speak to it, but, and I'm happy to share those. I believe it was 2 months or a little over 2 months that they were certified. They got through the process. A lot of that was whether or not they had a complaint process in place that was, and language needed to change to meet online students, and interviewing deans about certificate and licensure programs, but I even have the language to give out and surveys to give to deans and that to get that information. So anybody who hasn't that wants to, I'm happy to share that with you all.
Put me on your list, please. That'd be great. Thank you.
One thing I would mention about the solution you proposed, Kevin, would be it reminds me of the debacle with California this summer and financial aid. And ultimately, it's on us to know where our students are. So placing it in the hands of the students, I think there's some value there. But at the end of the day, we have to know where our students are at, regardless if they report this or not. The other challenge with it is the structure of, I might want to put the address in where I want mail to come. And it's not necessarily like, nothing online is saying where I'm at physically or where I'm taking classes from. Yeah, and so Kevin just mentioned he explains that in kind of the training and marketing they do to students. Is that? Yeah.
And Kevin, if you're watching the online chat, there's several of us that are asking to get your documentation as well. And in addition to, I don't remember the voice that was just talking, sorry. Where a student's location is at can change quickly. As an admin, mine changes quickly sometimes lately. So I've been known to pop in from Arizona now a lot, so.
And it's to that point that I don't trust IP addresses just for that perspective. Like, over the summer, I logged in as into my work from 5 different states over the summer alone, just based on travel, et cetera. So I just don't think that's an accurate thing. And I agree that it is our responsibility to know where our students are. But the only way we know where they're at is if they tell us where they're at, right? And so it's really educating them and giving them the tools to do that with. And I really like your idea, Patrick, of an e-learning solution that is, and those that have Starfish, this would be a great Starfish response to a feature to change, because I believe you can change your address directly in Starfish. So it would be a great nudge in Starfish as well as a solution.
This is Ariana. I am here, and I do want to reiterate that, Kevin, your documentation was super duper helpful. And I'm just curious, so this new call for public policy, the current language that Central and North both have about location and address change, that prompts students to let the college know of their change of address, that's not going to be sufficient? Or we're just brainstorming about how to be even more effective at making sure that the student address changes are tracked?
I mean, personally, I see it like we see a lot of things, because there's not specific examples given of what is an alignment. And so I see it kind of like the accreditation process, where it's our responsibility to prove that we have a system and structure in place to get the information, have the information updated. And to us at Central, what we are doing is considered sufficient until told otherwise.
Until told otherwise, right? Okay.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, if you're not accepting students, for those who know more about this than I, if you're not accepting students from out of state and you're not expecting your students to be taking classes from out of state, does any of this matter? That's first.
Even if you're not expecting it, that still happens.
Yeah, my understanding would be yes, because you're now providing distance education in the state, and you must be approved to do so. And so,
and then sorry, the second. Oh.
This is Kathleen. I was just going to say that before we had Sarah, we did have students register from out of state, and our past associate director, Tom, would just work with registration. If somebody did, they would work together. So they did still have to track it.
I guess the second question was, didn't we put something forward into the CTC link process last meeting about that?
Yes.
We talked about doing it, didn't we?
The one we did last time was about grades.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, we talked about putting something forward, and then y'all said, hey, Christopher, check out that CTC link thing and come back to us with a solution. And so I started exploring it, and I'm currently investigating with our enrollment services office about which process we could fit it into and potentially using those action steps. So I've met with them, emailed a few times, met with them once, and we're working through it. So, but yeah, when we had brought through the grades push from Canvas to CTC Link, and that one went up to IC, and they said we got a bunch of stuff to consider. It's just going to die here. Sorry. So we'll need to revisit that one.
Yeah, we may have more leverage with this one because it's compliance.
Absolutely. Yes, not convenience, compliance. This is a much bigger deal.
I would also recommend everybody coordinate with their VA office and maybe have a poster or notification. I spent 17 years moving around, and a lot of them as a student with a military family, and those moves never happen on a quarter. So it's going to happen sometimes in the middle of the quarter that the address changes. Have we done any notifications with them on we need to know if you move in the middle of the quarter?
I think the student training, and I appreciate Kevin's idea. I mean, I think that's a solution that can help work. Can't help but wonder, if I'm a student, why do I care?
I'm just worried students are going to think I'm a creeper asking them where the heck they are while they're taking online courses when I call them. And I was wondering, does it have to be an address where they're located or just a city and state for reporting?
Mostly just the state from the paperwork I've had to fill out.
Cool.
Yeah, with the NC-SARA reporting, it just asks for, it has a state and a box next to it with a number. And just last year they included Washington in that, so you got to count your full online Washington students.
Okay, so that's less creepy. Thank you.
Yeah, so you could just say for reporting and financial aid, because like with that SARA, or with the California debacle, I had to work with our financial aid director, and she had to email our California students to tell them they were no longer eligible for aid, and then reply back to them like 3 weeks later that they were, and it was cool again. So yeah, that's why it's important, and that's why they care, so they can get some money. So yeah, if you maybe work with like enrollment services and financial aid, so you're not the creeper asking the question, which is why I've asked the question a few times, like, isn't this an enrollment services thing? Mm-hmm. Why is this my thing? But here I am doing it. So.
On that said too, some of the creeper also goes to one of the later conversations about plagiarism and all of that. It won't save the students that are lying or pretending, like the people who hired people from Kenya. Yeah, I know it's an extreme. Sorry.
We do the best that we can with the data we have, and that doesn't happen very often.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool. Dawn, Sarah, did you have any other questions or areas of discussion for it?
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for contributing. And if you have any other ideas, let me know. And Kevin, were you going to share out that information to the entire listserv, or?
Yeah, so I just put in the chat online. What I'll do is I'll create a virtual folder because it's a lot of stuff that I provide, and I'll organize it in the exact order that you're asked throughout the application process. And I will then make that folder public and send the link out via the listserv.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was the last agenda item before lunch. Lunch is scheduled for 12. I think it's behind me, but I'd look to Tim to say is lunch. Yep, I get the thumbs up. So lunch is served. The idea is to have a working lunch and then adjourn when we are ready. We have a few lightning round items. We are also going to lead off with, and I know we're a little bit early, we're also going to lead off with a game, Cards Against eLearning by Amy. I know she stepped out, so we'll see if she returns. I think what we'll do is we'll ask that you kind of stay in the room for lunch, but we won't start working until we see if Amy's available. We'll have a few minutes and then we'll get on the topics. So enjoy your lunch. Please stay in the room.
Okay. Hey, Patrick. Thumbs up.
Okay, we test 1, test 2, test 1, test 2. Test 1, test 2. Great, thank you, Chris. We're gonna go ahead and get back started again. At the request of the council, we've decided to make sure we do a kind of a networking and social lunch on day 1. And then on day 2, a working lunch to get us out a bit early. So I see some fist pumping.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we'll do kind of our lightning round items now. You're welcome to continue eating, get more food as you like. It looks like there's plenty back there. But we're going to kick it off with a fun game that Amy is going to walk us through, Cards Against ELC. So Amy, take it away.
Okay, so who's played Cards Against Humanity or Apples to Apples? So this works just the same way. It's just a much cleaner, work-appropriate version. I know, boo-hiss, but since we're officially working for the state, when I was at InstructureCon this year, one of the presentations was about how actually Cards Against Humanity is OER. So who knew that, right? I didn't know that, but it is. So you're welcome to remix, rebuild, non-commercial Cards Against Humanity. So they had gone ahead and done this, and this is the really complicated attribution that they shared. And I don't even know how to do it right. But anyways, so it's OER, everyone. So you're able to customize this for your own campuses. And I made a version for our e-learning retreat. And so ours was actually called Cards Against E-Learning, Continuing Ed, and Classroom Support Services. So it's a bit long. But I went through and I added a bunch of private jokes and so everyone in the room had something kind of funny, and you had to clean it up. So some of this might not be that funny because I took out most of the inside jokes, but we're going to play a couple rounds. You can play it in a small group or you can play it in a big group like this. So what I need now is 4 or 5 volunteers to come up here. You're going to be, so if you've ever played before, you're going to have 4 or 5 white cards. I'm going to have like a complete the sentence option up here. And then from your deck of cards, you have to come up with the best option from your hand of cards. And then the room gets to judge who had the best answer. So, well, you'll get it. We'll play around and it'll be clearer. So you're not making up anything. You just go with what's on your card. So I just need 4 or 5 brave volunteers. Come on up. You can just sit on the stage or whatever. Come on. All right, Sarah, thank you. All right, Christopher, come on, one more. We got to have some options. And then all right, thank you, Jeremy. And everyone else has to get ready to, because the winner will be determined by how loud you clap when it's that time. So I have to hold this microphone. So go ahead and take 5 cards. Everyone can get 5 cards. And then I have all the resources too. I don't really know where to put them, but you can have all of them. I have the cards, the instructions, the PowerPoints, everything. So I'll figure out how to share that out with the group. All right, so they're getting their cards. I'm gonna go ahead and project a black card on the screen. I'm gonna be the judge only in that I'm facilitating you all deciding. We already said all this, so whatever. Okay. You don't have to. And then whoever has the card that you all vote for, they're the winner of that round. And I forgot stickers. I was going to give everyone a sticker every time they won, and whoever gets 2 or 3 stickers wins. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
I never stopped it.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Whoops. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. My guinea pigs, you got some? Okay. So the question that they need to fill in the blank is, an ELC meeting is not complete without blank. So now they're going to look at their cards and come up with the best answer from their hand of cards. And then they're going to hand them to me. Thank you. Thank you.
Can we replenish our hand?
Yes, you can replenish your hand. Here you go. All right, and I'm going to mix them up so we don't know who gave me which one. Okay, and half of it's in the delivery, so you have to have a good moderator, and not that I'm the best moderator, but okay. An ELC meeting is not complete without budget reports. Woo! You guys have to cheer. Okay, you're participating. Ugh, okay. An ELC meeting is not complete without decoding budget reports. I think I see a theme here. An ELC meeting is not complete without donuts in HR. And finally, oh yeah, the donuts in the back of the room. An ELC meeting is not complete without Zoom breakout rooms. So then you all get to be like, oh, my favorite was which? So budget reports. No. Decoding budget reports. Donuts in HR. Okay. Or Zoom breakout rooms.
Yay!
Thank you very much. I think that was Brandy, I'm guessing. All right, so.
Of course.
What's that?
I said, of course.
Of course, yes, thank you, Brandy. You were very loud, but I think you were a less number of votes, so I'm gonna go with donuts in HR. So whose was that? All right, Jeremy. So you get a gold star here. Oh, you even have one, look. Yeah. Okay. So that's how it goes, and it's a lot funnier if you can do things related to your life at work, but we're gonna try again. All right, so the first week of the quarter, all I want is blank. And they replenished their cards while we were reading those. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so here we go. The first week of the quarter, all I want is coffee. Woo, I'll vote for that. The first week of the quarter, all I want is candy bowl. The first week of the quarter, all I want is snow days. The first week of the quarter, all I want is aligning course outcomes with objectives. All right, so we got to vote now, everyone. All right, all I want is coffee. Okay. All I want is candy bowl. All right. All I want is snow days. All right. And all I want is aligning course outcomes and objectives. Okay, snow days, clearly winner. All right. Nice work. There you go, Matthias. All right, should we do one more so we determine a winner? Or are you guys bored and you get it and we should move on? Okay. Y'all got more cards? Okay. My favorite Canvas ticket of all times was about blank. So you just have to customize. You have to think about what happens in your little place and what would be funny. Thank you, thank you. Thank you much. All right. Mix them up. All right, my favorite Canvas ticket of all times was about smelly kitchen sponges. My favorite Canvas ticket of all times was about food trucks in the courtyard. My favorite Canvas ticket of all times was about copyright. And my favorite Canvas ticket of all times was about a VHS player. All right, that seems to be the winner, but I'll try. Okay. My favorite ticket was about smelly kitchen sponges. Food truck in the courtyard. Copyright. Okay.
Turn on the copyright and I walked every single file on the first day of recording.
That was pretty hilarious. I'm not sure it's really your favorite ticket though. All right, so VHS players. Yeah, okay. Who was that? Woo, oh, Matthias. All right, that's 2 stars for Matthias. He wins. So yay, you win an extra donut. I don't have any prizes today, but thank you for playing. So I will share out somehow all that with you. I print the cards. I have black cards and white cards and instructions and everything. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Amy. That was fun. So next, we're going to jump into our lightning rounds. And we'll follow that by a quick norm on winter meetings, and then we'll adjourn. So for lightning rounds, first up is kind of twofold, Kathy Chatfield and myself. And so we were just checking to see if Kathy was online because she mentioned she might have to step out. So we'll see.
I'm not seeing her.
Okay. This will be really brief. I can take mine then. This is actually kind of, I think I kind of got my answer to this question yesterday, but essentially at Spokane, we're at the point where we're over our 10,000 limit for our proctoring solution. We currently use Respondus, Lockdown Browser, and Monitor. And so my question yesterday, a quick reminder, I was talking to eTag about, and by the time they get everything figured out with this app store, what do I do in the meantime? And what I heard was the advice was you're on your own, do your own RFP, but make sure you include the WIPY language in it so others can tack on. I was talking at lunch with Chris, and he mentioned if it's over 10,000 but under 100,000, there's an option. Chris, chime in if I'm saying anything incorrect, but there's an option where you can get 3 quotes from vendors. You have to make your requirements, get 3 quotes from vendors, and then do a justification statement without doing an RFP. I had not heard of that before. That was something kind of Chris mentioned to me. So that might be an option that we will pursue. But I guess what I'm taking this item now is in Spokane, we will either be doing that or we will be doing an RFP for a proctoring solution because we don't have a choice. So since the App Store is not ready to go yet, if you have any interest in that at all and would like to join me in that effort, let me know. Maybe we could get a better price, but we had a demo of HonorLock. We currently use Respondus, and probably during winter quarter, we'll be doing the process. So if you want to tack on with me with either the quote strategy or the RFP strategy, shoot me an email. That's all I have.
Can I tag onto that for the plagiarism software? We're going to be doing a trial pretty soon after we declare our criteria with Turnitin and Unicheck. I know several of you are using Unicheck. Also, if somebody has the WIPY language, could you please email that to me?
I think we can find that and put that in the minutes. Christy has her hand raised.
It also just might be worth a try. When we were going through the City Labs process, I told them it would have to be under 10,000 for us to do it, and they dropped the price.
Chris mentioned that to me at lunch as well, but I've done that for 3 years, and it's not working anymore. So if anyone has the WIPY language, Kevin mentioned he kind of did a quick search and couldn't find exactly what it is. If anyone actually has it, request from Brandy, a good request. If you have it, email it to Kevin and he will make sure it's in the notes for everyone. Okay. I don't see any other hands or any other voices, so I think the floor is yours, Mark.
The mic frenzy. All right, for which one? Oh, for the regulatory requirements. So this is not a bald-faced attempt to crowdsource my job, because I thought it might be something that y'all might find useful as well. So at some point in the near future, I have to, yes.
You have a slide deck that aligns with what you're talking about?
Yes, well, yes and no. If you click on the link there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
At some point in the near future, I have to share with one of our labor management groups about kind of the regulatory framework and requirements that affect online learning. And so I am starting to work on that. But what I wanted to do was, first of all, see if I could get some help with brainstorming all the various things that I need to cover, just the high-level outline stuff, with the promise that whatever I then come up with is going to be Creative Commons licensed and shared on the ELC Shared Resources site. So if you have a moment now to take a look, is there a way to do that in edit mode? But if you click on the link in the agenda, you'll see where it is now, and it's turned on for editing. And just feel free to drop stuff in there. I'm trying to do it by jurisdiction or by authority. So federal, accreditation, state, and then college.
Mark, just one of the things that the accreditation team commented on, which I think is also, because I actually told the accreditation team, like, if we're going to be a part of this, I would like to have some standards to be compared to. And one of the ones, the CRAC that are a part of the NC SARA, I made sure that those were a part of the accreditation information that I gave them, and how we meet those standards are some really good standards to start with as well.
Yeah, I think that was one I was thinking about bringing in because of the SARA piece. And we're not currently a SARA school, but I could see us going there, especially as enrollments get tight.
Well, and the nice thing is that you don't have to be. The CROCs are a great place to start, whether you're SARA school or not, as far as like doing an internal audit of your e-learning department to see if you're meeting a baseline set of standards.
Yeah, and they're fairly well established, I think, both in accreditation, and then you can use those as a baseline for kind of broader, for any other regulatory matters that show up.
I can also give you one of the things that was interesting for my team. I have members on my team that have been in their jobs for over 20 years. And in the past, the accreditation team actually sent questions and data points that they wanted from e-learning specifically before they visited. And so I got 3 visits worth of those questions from my team because they had kept that information. I can share that with you as well.
That'd be great. I'll add it in. Yeah. Is this something that's useful to other schools?
Yeah, it's basically the handbook I've been creating for in the event we get audited.
Mm-hmm.
File. That's what my nickname for it. It has all the definitions I could find, things that link directly back to our schools. Steal at will.
Nice. Very useful. We've thought about doing something like this and just have never done it.
Yeah. I'm thinking it might be helpful for cabinet level discussions as well. And ultimately, that's probably where this goes. All right. That's all I had. Like I said, feel free to jump in there and see if there's anything else category-wise or content-wise that would be useful for you to have in a presentation about this.
When it's finished, is it okay if we link it on the ELC website?
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's my intent.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks.
Mark, this is something that I'm really interested in if you want to dive deeper into actually, like I'm working on an operation and procedures manual for our department that includes stuff like this. I'd be happy to look at it at a more global level.
Yeah, I'll loop you in next time I take a pass at it.
Anything else for Mark? I believe the next item is Chris. Yeah, it's around the date, InstructureCon. I put your name on it since you mentioned it, but.
I'm hosting. I'm going to InstructureCon. They're at the same time. This presents a problem. All right, I respect that. So we'll have to coordinate with the LLC on some new dates. Do you have proposed ones? Or should we just work with the LLC, see what works for them, loop back via email on the LLC listserv, and confirm dates digitally, or at least at the next meeting?
We have the time. It's usually productive to at least come to the table with a few dates in mind.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just do that now.
Feels like, I'm not going to InstructureCon this year, but it feels like the week before and week after are not great.
Ariana, is Ariana still online? Just, is Ariana still online? LLC chair.
I think she said she had to leave.
Okay, Chris, as host, do you have any recommendations for a date?
It would just be me checking the room reservation software 25 Live to see which rooms some rooms that I have in mind and whether or not they're available on those days. So I would need to look at those days. So I could look at those days, see what's available, and then send out some proposed dates and get some feedback. I don't have the 25 Live schedule for rooms memorized at the moment.
Shame on you for that. I mean, I think that sounds good because we don't want to take time and pick a date that doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And I can also coordinate with our library director too, who is co-hosting.
Thinking about the IC meeting, they had it pretty early this year, around July 9th. I don't know, historically, have they had the summer meeting in early July? Okay, if we could get it before that or close to it, that would be really cool.
It's hard though. Because
it is. Yeah. I can just do the same thing I did this time and wing it. So never mind. Just have the meeting whenever.
So I'll propose some late June and July dates. Or August? What are you feeling?
We've had the last 2 years, we've had it the second week of August.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And we've also been conscientious about not doing it on a Friday. And I think
So she was saying, oh, yeah, Mike.
I was saying the last 2 years we've had it the second week of August, and we've also had the instructional design report, which I think has worked well to get instructional designers to come. And then we've been conscientious of schools are closed on Friday. So I think if that can all just be taken into consideration as you're looking at coordinating with LLC and your room availability, it would be nice. That's all.
Yeah. Do you have preference? So yeah, we're closed on Fridays. So we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as an option. Do you prefer a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday option or a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday option? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay. I'll look at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday options.
I would just ask on behalf of people who have to arrange summer childcare for children that we make this decision soon.
Absolutely.
Because it's right about the holidays is time to lock down your summer care. So.
Hey, Chris, that's going to be my first meeting. So if you could just loop me in, I know I'm out of town late June, but August would work. So if you can just, make sure that you and I are in that loop.
I will look at August dates.
Thank you.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, August dates.
Perfect. So we'll just note that on the minutes and in the agenda, we always try to show the future dates. So we'll make a note that the summer 2020 date will change from what it says. And Chris will follow up with us. Thank you, and thanks for pointing that out. Okay, unless there's anything else, which it looks like there's not, Jeff's up next.
Okay. What I've got going on is this draft of a white paper, and it's called SBCTC Support for Learning Analytics. Now, where this grew out of, it's coming from the Education Division and Open Education, where we started to look at our ally data and as a test case to sort of see what we could learn about the connection between ally teaching and learning and student success, and just sort of as a test. And as we went, we were running into issues that all sounded very familiar to everyone. For instance, people had ideas about, using Tableau, going through the policies to see what data we could gather and how we should handle that data. And then as I started to talk to more people, Mark Jenkins suggested I talk to Mark Lentini. And so Mark connected me with some of the past work that the ELC has done on this. Now, one of the reasons why I am very interested in this as a I'm going to call it a problem, is because I'm looking at the research in learning analytics, and 2 years ago there's a pretty big study that came out that talked about, and I have a link to it in the document. One of the things that it said was that, let's see, what was it? It was that they did analytics studies. It was a meta study of a lot of different analytic studies. And what they did was they said, okay, let's take a look at student satisfaction and compare it to student success. And they found that they thought, well, the happier the students were, obviously the more successful they would be. And they found that in these studies, that was not the case. Then they said, well, let's not look at student satisfaction. Let's look at learning interventions. You know, like we provide them with tutoring and things like this. And once again, the study found that there was no connection between the interventions and the student success. Now, that's not to say that individual studies didn't find it. It's just when you did a meta-analysis, all of those studies flatline at under a 10%, right? So what that means is, that these systems that were doing those analytical studies all had different kinds of definitions about what learning analytics is, what you measure, how you measure it, what tools you measure it with, how long you measure it, all of these pieces. So the idea is that if we do learning analytics, then making sure that we had a common language, a common set of tools, and some sort of common understanding of what we were doing would be helpful. So let's say we have 10 colleges that are doing learning analytics. The data might be useful for that individual school, but may not be for the system as a whole. Also, it's funny to see when somebody will say, I did this study, I did the same study in my institution, and I got completely different results. And that, of course, is because the two different institutions are gathering data differently. So in this, and so what the white paper is meant to do, it's meant to talk about how important definitions are, what the purpose would be for analytics, like what problems are we looking to solve, look at what the state of data analytics is at the state board and the various entities attached to it, see what people are doing. Look at some of the possibilities and the challenges of data analytics. And I've had Paul Creamer has come in and made a few comments. And what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to gather more information from the ELC members about what their institutions are doing, and include that in this document. And it's a short one right now. I want to keep it, short and useful. And then the end game is to see how the state board could support these efforts throughout the system. Right? We know that there's some efforts going on, and what we're wondering is if there's some way that these efforts could be coordinated in a way that would be useful to the colleges and the system as a whole. What I would ask is that I'm going to send out I'll send out an email to everyone here with some very specific questions. And so when you see the email, you'll know that it's not a spam from GBC Education Consulting, but it's an actual real email. Let's see, anything else? So it was specifically, we want to figure out how we can help the CTCs better understand learning analytics, what tools we would need to be successful as a system, and what further policies would need to be in place to successfully address the challenges, and what common resources do we share, and what can we do to help facilitate further discussions. So there's, I am not, like some big advocate for learning analytics. What I do know is that there are all the companies and vendors that we contract with generate data, and how that data, if we don't get a grasp on what that data is and how we can use it, I believe that somebody else will, and maybe to our benefit, maybe not. And then also, for instance, we have contractually with Ally, Blackboard in the contract says they will provide us with data. And we've gotten, I've looked at one of the reports, and all I come up with is questions, right? About how this column of data relates to this column of data. In one column it says, well, this was 60%, and it's not clear what it's 60% of what, and then there's also old data mixed in with new data in some of the reporting. So we have questions, and I'm sure that they'll help us sort that out. But so that's what the project is, and it's not we want to see this as a collaborative effort. And any suggestions, concerns, successes, failures, anything like that you've seen in the history of your institution, I'd be interested in talking to you about. So that's any initial comments or questions? Yes. Oh, here we go.
So I think this relates to those emails we got from Mark Carbon earlier, maybe this fall, about do we have permission to access our Ally data? Did that come from this process? Probably.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an earlier iteration of this, so it was, yeah, go ahead.
So at the time we decided no, because as we were talking earlier, we have super tight faculty concerns about their content and sharing anything that's identifiable back to them. So if we can get a little more information about how the data is going to be used, then we're happy to share. I mean, I really want to share because I want to see how we're doing as a system, but we just need a little more clarification about how it's going to be shared, so that we can look at our faculty and say, hey, it's not, you won't be able to be identified from this data set at the state level. That's all. So if we can get some clarity about that, we'll be happy to share our data.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and it's interesting. I just got another microphone. It's interesting because Mark, I think, got different responses from people, and some of those responses were, "Oh yeah, sure, here," and other responses are, "Hey, there's a institutional research piece to that, and some policies that are probably out there." And Steve Gantz got something to.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, just to follow up on what Amy said, I mean, I think that's kind of our intention, even though we don't have anything in place yet. Our intention is to somehow figure out, well, what data are we asking for? And we need to be clear. I think, yes, here's how we're going to use it. And it may be that we don't need all the data. So the data you might have available, maybe you want to filter that and say, oh, well, I'm going to remove this kind of information. So that's where, Ally Data was kind of our first look at this, and we were going, oh, well, because in some respects, Ally for us, from our instance, our particular data is not very useful to us, right? Because we don't really run courses. So now if we start to look at the data, well, we need to really look at yours. But now, yes, there's all these concerns about what would you use it for? What, are you going to track individual faculty or all that kind of stuff? So that's where that comes from. So I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but this is the first start. Well, this is a start of what do we understand we're doing or think we're doing, and then probably we do need a kind of a little subgroup somehow to come together and say, well, at least here's a draft set of policies that we'll follow. And we might even have, I had some exchanges with Kathy Chatfield at Clark. We may even have kind of a subgroup that would just be a few colleges that would share the data. We would start to look at it, start to analyze it, and then amongst ourselves, we would, just agree that we're not sharing it yet until we figure out what to do with it. We've got some work to do that way.
Yeah, and from our end at the state in education technology, we're looking at things like, we totally disaggregated from any student identities or faculty. They'll tell us how often a tool is used, how often something's accessed, how often materials are changed. And the piece that's missing is, okay, so what? How much is this helping? Is this where we should be investing our time, money, and energy? And so that there's ways to do this with protecting identity. But anyway, that's the education ed tech analytics piece. And if you have any more questions about this, please feel free to contact Steve or myself, and we'd be happy to talk to you. And then we, of course, will be reaching out to you. So thank you for your time here on your agenda. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Next is back to Mark.
Hi. So I had a question come up in one of our management team meetings about what's going on with, we had the subject of the meeting was, what are we doing with local school districts? And question came up about whether we're doing anything Canvas-wise. And it turns out like two of our sending districts are actually Canvas clients. And I'd worked with one of them in the past. I was curious what other colleges are doing specifically in kind of the realm of Canvas and ed tech with high schools and school districts in your area.
Nothing from Cascadia.
Yeah,
the crickets are off mic here.
I noticed that was intriguing. We don't have any court sharing or anything like that, but Bo Young has been involved in conversations with the OER person at OSPI, and there's kind of some intersections there about, oh, well, maybe we should be coordinating somehow there. But yeah, in terms of sharing courses like that, it kind of makes sense. We had a demo of something the other day, and I can't remember what it was now, but about it's kind of a database of OER materials actually that's really designed for K-12. And of course, there's a lot of stuff in there, like in the high school level, that's really could be college level stuff. So is that what you're getting at?
Our college is partnered with a high school in, I want to say they're in Pacific County. And I believe what we're doing there is we just have a lab set up at the school for running START students to use. And I think that's probably about the most that we've done in terms of partnering with K-12 institutions. But I can get you more information about that. Like,
I'm specifically interested in the EdTech angle. We have a bunch of stuff we're doing with the local districts, but very little of it is Canvas focused. If it is Canvas focused, if there's a Canvas component, it's because.
Hey, Mark, your mic is going out.
And now I can hear the static. Woo, woo, woo. That was Chris, just to be clear. Chrissy's got her hand up, but yeah, I'm mostly looking like all we really did was we shared orientation materials with the school district, and we have lots of different programs that work with the high schools, but nothing that's like tech focused. So hand up.
At Tacoma, there's a group of faculty in English that are using Canvas with the K-12 teachers just as like to house their professional development. The project's called Tacomatopia, and the e-learning team gave the K-12 educators guest accounts, and they use Canvas to do discussions and house resources. So from a professional development standpoint.
Can you say a bit more about what your institution is doing?
If I knew all about it, yeah. We're doing a lot of work with that I would categorize as, hey, middle school students, high school students, your college material, and you can come to college at Highline. So we are the districts we serve. If you sort of just wrap your head around the demographics of South King County, the districts we serve are typically poor, immigrant, first generation, people of color. The free and reduced lunch at least two of the districts is close to 75%. So the idea that college is a possibility is not widespread. So we're just doing a lot of work around building relationships like in specific demographics. So like working across sectors for Native students or working across sectors for Pacific Island students.
And is most of this work being done through your admissions office? You're running START coordinators?
A lot of it's out of our instruction area and our outreach office. So.
The goal of the Tacomatopia project, which is grant funding with a special grant that allows for pizza and beer, so they often gather at a bar. The goal is to help more students come in ready for English 101 instead of pointing fingers like, how did they get through high school and get here and not be ready? To collaborate with the educators and what can we be doing different in the classroom so that students come in ready for English 101.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a bunch of different, we do some dropout recovery, we do a bunch of dropout recovery. We do some programs around like college and high school students in college that aren't running START, career START, that sort of thing. So it tends to be pretty highly targeted, but really geared toward getting students from high school to college successfully. Well, like I said, there's not really an ed tech component to that. Trying to turn the mic on here. All right. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mark. We have a little bit more time for this agenda item. So before closing it out, I would just ask if there's any other topics that anyone would like to bring forward.
I have a quick question. Spring meeting is at LCC, and I might not be able to get McMinimans for the meeting room, but would you all still like to stay there at the government rate? It's an 18-minute drive to LCC, so it's not too far. The rooms are far better than the Red Lion in town. I highly recommend staying at McMinimans instead. So would you all be willing to commute 18 minutes? That's what I need to know. Yes? Okay, awesome, great. That puts a little less pressure on me to try and get a meeting room there, because I can definitely get a meeting room at LCC easily. So, okay, cool, thank you.
Any other?
Real quick, I just want to, so this was my first time taking minutes. I want to thank all the presenters who actually, gave me stuff to link. You sent me, I've got your stuff from the Cards Against ELC already up there and linked. So thank you so much for making this easier on me than I expected, because I was very nervous.
Any other topics to bring forward? Okay, before we close out, I just want to discuss the next meeting a little bit. If you look at the bottom of the agenda there, it's February 6th. This is probably especially important for new folks who might not be familiar with kind of what we do. For the winter meeting, we meet as a region, and there are regions listed on the website. If you go, I think the easiest way to find it is to go to current membership list, and then there's a regional reps button, and it will break down who's in what region and what the regions are. It looks like Chris is navigating there now. But we meet with our regions during this time. So we gather at one of the regional locations as a group. We Zoom in together and have a joint meeting that way. We do that, I think, primarily to lower travel during one of the harder times for travel, especially in some of our locations. And that is going to be February 6th. We are going to be mindful of travel, and we'll start again at 10 a.m. at your regional sites. And I'll get to the regional sites part here in just a minute. But to drill that down, February 6th at 10, and we will adjourn no later than 4. So 10 to 4, February 6th will be our next meeting. I'll take you through our tentative plan for that. Based on feedback from, I think it was the last meeting, we talked a little bit about some of the confusion between all these councils and commissions and SBCTC and the roles there. And for those of us who have been around a while, you might recall that we used to hold the winter meeting in Olympia. And one of the things we did at that meeting was, it was a big chunk of the meeting, was have the state board folks give a presentation about the different offices at the state board, who they are, what they do, as well as a kind of educational piece on councils and commissions, and to try to demystify our system and our process. And at the last meeting, I believe it was suggested that there is some value in continuing to do that. However, we did want to stick with the regional meetings and not force everyone to travel to Olympia. So I have asked Mark at SBCTC to kind of help with that, and hope that we can get them on Zoom for a part of that and kind of redo that presentation. We think it's valuable for the new folks at ELC, it's valuable for the new folks at SBCTC, but it's also valuable for those of us who've been around a while because it is complex. So the plan for this meeting is to have that part. The plan is to also spend some time meeting in our regions, and the E-team are going to come up with some specific discussion questions for that piece, facilitated discussion questions, and we'll come back, and so I almost missed the most important part, that are going to kind of align with our work plan and the goals of the ELC, and we'll come back as a group and discuss those. The other thing that we'll do during that time is work group report outs. This is particularly important because the kind of ask and expectation of the work groups is that you find a time to meet online prior to the February 6th date. And what we're going to do during that time, so this is kind of putting you on blast to some degree, we are going to open the website onto your work group page and have you talk us through your last meeting and what you've done, and give us a kind of a work group update on that February 6th meeting. One, that keeps us kind of accountable to make sure we're achieving our objectives. It also gives Sarah the opportunity to kind of wrap that up into a report for the IC. So that'll be something that happens at that meeting. I'll do a normal call for agenda items, but that meeting is going to be relatively full. So just as typically, I'll take them first come, first serve. If yours doesn't get on the list, we'll push it to spring. And of course, we'll do a call for spring items. But that's what the meeting looks like. The last thing before we adjourn, while you don't have to do this, I highly encourage you before you leave here today to quickly meet up with your region and determine where that is going to be. And a lot of times it's been you just keep doing it in the same place. And if that's the case, no problem. But be mindful that there's new folks here or maybe folks who haven't attended before. So meet up and let everyone kind of know where that's at. I also ask that you, once you've decided that, you email Tim so that he can post that to the website, as well as any logistics, parking, map, all of that good stuff. Any questions about the winter meeting? Okay. I ask that if you are part of the E-team, we just meet up for no longer than 15 minutes for a quick debrief. Other than that, the meeting is adjourned. Safe travels.